And also,
Yeah.
I want to ask you something. And
Yeah.
Ruben, I don't want to say he chastised me or, you have a brother, Hanan?
I have a sister.
You have a sister. Okay. Well, sometimes, siblings, they kind of get you. And so he's probably wondering what I'm about to say. I don't think, I know I butchered your last name. And can
Oh,
you help me with
yeah.
that?
Don't apologize about that. I've been dealing with my name my whole life. So it's the way you say it is Hanan. So it's
Hanan.
kind of like Hanan with the accent on the second syllable. So
Okay.
Hanan and Harkle. I say Harkle.
Uh, m- uh, by the way, nice to meet you, Mr.
Nice to meet you.
Cole. What I don't understand is
Okay, here we go.
he said that in the review after hearing your name for 2 hours, properly pronounced.
It's okay. I've 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 read so many reviews, the LA Times, the Hollywood Reporter, so many people reviewed the movie. It has 100% on Rotten Tomatoes. I have not ever heard a review that was so personal and so nuanced
Oh,
as
geez.
your review. It's
Oh.
clear that you're teachers. It's clear that you get it.
Oh,
And
we got to put this in the episode.
Oh, one
Let him
of,
finish,
I
Jake.
mean, one of the questions that you said you wanted to ask is, did we get anything wrong? You got everything right. And not only did you get it right, you got it from the perspective of a teacher. And the closest thing that echoes your review are the comments. If you look on Amazon, on the comments from people that rented it from around the country, they're like, this reminds me of my first year of teaching. This is exactly what happened to me. Finally, someone is lecturing. And that's exactly why I made the movie.
Hey there. Pod and Delivery here, Ruben, myself, and today we have a special guest, Hanan Harchol. Hanan, welcome. Thank you for coming on today.
It's such a privilege. And after hearing the review of my film, the way you did it, it was so spot on. You really, I mean, you picked up on everything I was trying to convey. So I was just sitting there beaming, and my wife was like, you could not have asked for I mean, really, you came from a place of understanding and experience. And I just felt like I was speaking to my people. So
Oh, wow.
thank you. It's an honor to be amongst two experienced teachers and speaking to your audience.
Oh, thank you, Hanan. Can you actually let our audience know how long you've been teaching, or if you're still, I don't actually don't know. I didn't ask this question before we started recording, but tell me about, or tell our audience if you're still teaching and how long you've been teaching and what you teach.
Yeah, so I teach film production. I'm still teaching. It's my 15th year. Um, and again, the movie that I made, as you know, focuses not on my, 10th year, 14th year, where things it's still an incredibly demanding job, but it's fun. I've bonded with the kids, things are going well. My movie focuses on my first 3 years, on how I wanted to quit and how they wanted to fire me, and how I almost left. So that's what the movie focuses on, my first three. But I've been teaching for 15 now, and
Oh,
still am
wow.
doing it happily.
Wow. I want to just say, first of all, Mr. Harkle, I mean, that's just how I know you as from the movie. But first of all, thank you for making a good film. I want to say that because Jacob and I, well, Jacob wouldn't say this. I don't want to speak for him, but we see a lot of movies on this channel, on this teaching channel. Too many are not good. So thank you. And I guess my first question is the performance. Is it Dove Tiefenbach?
Yes.
I have to say that in the past, I worked with students, and we call it now underserved. It used to be called at-risk area, where yes, many of my students were either in gangs. Some of the girls were pregnant. There were a lot of at risk is probably a better way to describe it, and it was very hard to tell people I knew, what kind of students do you have, what kind of situation is it.
Yeah.
Up until your movie, I've never seen anything like how I felt. And that's the performance of Dove Tiefenbach. We have to give him credit, because I felt him and his struggle and not knowing what to do and feeling I have all this knowledge in my head as a creative writing major and wanting to impart it on students, but I'm getting this. How did you get that performance from him?
So we really struggled to find the lead actor. And I believe it's Dove or Dove's agent contacted our casting director, I think a week or two before we were going to start filming, maybe about a week. And I just had a couple of days to work with him. He's insanely talented. And what would happen, and this is very unconventional in a feature film, but there were many times where he would stop production. And I asked, other people that I know in the industry, does this happen? And they're like, well, if you're working with George Clooney or something, maybe it does. But normally an actor doesn't stop production because it costs money and it wastes time. But he would stop production because he would say, I don't understand this line. I don't understand why I'm saying this line. Where am I coming from? What's going on? And sometimes we would have a conversation for an hour until he understood the emotional motivation of where I was coming from, what was going on. And I'm so grateful that he did in hindsight, because I can't tell you how many people have commented on his performance. And without his amazing performance, the movie would not be the movie it is. It just wouldn't be. So I'm eternally grateful for his performance and for his talent. And I think you're absolutely right. He wanted to know what's going on. How am I dealing with this? And yeah.
It's for those of you who are watching this discussion with Hanan Harchol, you must watch this movie. And we've got comments saying, because we posted on Facebook, and the most realistic teaching movie I've ever seen. It's really, at one point I watch it and I think, is this a documentary? This looks like a real teacher who's a fish out of water. So kudos. And yeah, Jacob.
I'm sorry. I when I first started watching it, I'm glad you brought that up, Ruben. I did think it was maybe a documentary because it just felt so real. Like, what's going on here? Maybe they're gonna, because I had no clue what the film was going to be about, and I try not to do that. Try not to learn about it before. Afterwards, I get curious. I want to know some, and I did. I said, I think he's still teaching, and actually, I want to go there first. You're really talented. I mean, when I say that, I mean, because we've seen so many films. You wrote it, you directed it. I know it's part of you because you were the teacher, but do you have any aspirations to continue doing this? Because I know you teach, but I mean, you obviously did a good job here. I mean, have you thought about what's, regarding film?
Well, thank you. First of all, I want to say that I used former students of mine. They were most of the cast. A former student of mine shot the film. We rented an expensive camera
Really?
and he shot the film. And the whole documentary style that you're talking about is I wanted to make it realistic. I wanted you to feel the chaos of the emotion in the film. But the advantage of writing a narrative is that you can have a narrative arc. And there really was an arc to my story. I do also want to say that it took 2 years to write the screenplay, because even though it was based on my life and every single thing that's in the movie is true, identities were
Really?
changed and things like that. Every single thing that happened, but not always 100% in that way to that character. And I can give you details on that. But what I would do is I would combine two or three different stories that happened to me, change the gender, change the race, change the time of the conversation. So,
Sure.
but everything in there is real. And in terms of the documentary style, I wanted it to feel real, but I also wanted to be able to tell my story. In terms of what my future film projects are, this came very organically because at around my 7th, 8th year, and then people were trying to poach me for another school that was a school that I would have killed to teach in before, but I'm like, what's going to happen to my kids? And they were like, well, we serve underprivileged kids too. And I looked and I'm like, it's not quite that. And by then, I'd really been bitten by the bug that this was my calling. It was important for me that I was getting more back from my students than I was giving them in terms of what they were teaching me, and opening my eyes to see people in a full, and hear people in a full way. So I stayed in my school, but I was watching teacher movies, and either it was someone falling asleep behind the desk, and I thought it's just disrespectful, and they're turning it, or it would be some kind of like comedy farce, or it would be like someone teaching their kids karate. And I'm like, what is going on? And I saw sincere teachers trying their best and just getting it from all ends and not being prepared properly for the job. And there were so many misconceptions I had about what it means to teach. And I felt there was not a movie that was honestly showing it. And then came the movie The Class, which won the Cannes Palme d'Or. And they were saying, this is what an inner city school looks like. This is it. And I went there eagerly trying to see, well, what is it going to be? And I'm like, the kids are all sitting in their desks. Like, what are you talking about? Like, it just, so I decided I have to make something that is at least honest to what my experience was. So that's why I made the film.
I really like what you just said there. When you said, and by the way, we reviewed that movie too, The Class. Uh, but but we like the movie, but I agree with you. It's not completely realistic to some of our experiences. But you said a teacher who's well-meaning, well-intentioned, but doesn't know. There's a interview you had, I found of yours, you had with somebody, and you were mentioning that there are so many teachers who come into an environment like this who don't know how to work with these type of students with these needs. And so I will say your movie, though, is a way of training. And as I'm talking to you, I'm thinking maybe these movies or this movie can be part of that training process. But to your point, we need more of that instruction of how to do it. There are these well-intentioned teachers who are suffering, because that's what I got when I was watching Mr. Harchol in this movie. This poor man is suffering.
Yeah. Well, Ruben, you hit the nail on the head. There are professors that are now using my movie as required viewing for their classes of students that are about to become teachers. And Carol Rogers is one of them. She's invited me then to speak to her students after they watch the movie, and they have lots of questions. And I think that you know, I know you didn't ask about this specific thing, but I am trying right now to leverage my experience and an award that I recently won to try to change the way teachers are mentored, because we have a mentorship program here in New York, and I've been a mentor where all I have to do is log in 15 minutes twice a week with my mentee, and I don't even have to be in their classroom, and it's just not enough training. So I'm trying to revamp the way teachers are mentored, because some teachers tell me that their student teaching was, a full 6 months of being in a classroom, having to teach a class with an experienced teacher in the classroom with them. And if I had had that kind of mentorship, but I've heard from other people from very prestigious programs that they get to teach 6 or 7 days in summer school, and then they're thrown into a school in the Bronx. And of course, within 6 months, they leave. And it's not the teacher's fault. It's the system, or the non-existent system, to prepare teachers for what they're about to face. And that lack of support, then the teachers leave feeling like failures. And ultimately, the people who suffer the most, as you know, are then the poor students who get inexperienced teacher after inexperienced teacher. So I'm trying right now to revamp the mentorship system. And the first step is, as you mentioned, for people to see the movie and feel like, okay, here's a lifeline. Someone else is going through this too. Maybe there is light at the end of the tunnel. Maybe this can begin a conversation on how to better prepare teachers.
Oh yeah, in the beginning of the film, I think you had something you had on the
The statistic.
worded, statistic saying, I think it was like, was it 4 out of 10 teachers leave within the first 5 years? And I think that's still true, correct? I mean,
I think it's higher. I don't have the exact data, but I think it's higher. From all the graphs that I've seen, they're struggling so much to hire teachers. And again, they're coming in with the right intentions, but they're not receiving the right training. And everything that happened with a math teacher, and me thinking that because she went to Columbia Teachers College, oh, that means that she got the right training. And she says, I was just lectured to by 80-year-old white guys. They
Right.
didn't teach me anything about teaching. I was crying in my assistant principal's office. That's an actual conversation that I had with a math teacher.
I believe that, and I think that's one of the scenes I really enjoy. That the teacher that referred you to this math teacher, she was like, he referred me, and I felt like that was so real because teachers know the good teachers. On a campus, the ones that are doing some really special stuff, and
Yeah.
then the ones that aren't doing some, aren't doing that special. The kids talk, but you also know the people. So I'm glad you brought that in there.
Yeah.
So to give some context, because I'm aware there might be people who have not watched the film. As you watch this character, who's a real life character, obviously it's you, but when you watch him, he comes into an environment, this classroom, where students just are apathetic and laying down on this, playing a video game, not getting off the video game, staying on it, get off the game, turn it off. Another student asleep, talking back, day after day. And one of the questions is, as you feel it, the anxiety is rising because as a former teacher, I go, oh, I've been there. One of the questions that comes into my mind as I'm watching is, but what's keeping him there? What is keeping him there? And I read an interview with you where you say, and I have a comment on this as well, but I want you to ask and maybe expand on it, where you say that some of your Jewish upbringing and some of your values, I'm not sure if you said you kept you there, but informed you in some way. What did you mean by that?
Yeah, around the same time that I started teaching, I grew up very, 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 very non-observant. My father was a nuclear physicist. He said, religion is nonsense, God is nonsense. He was a nuclear physicist. But I started at the same time, then starting working on a project where I started actually reading some texts and learning about some traditional values. And I started learning things that went very, very much against what I thought before. So, I came before from, well, if the person isn't willing to do the work, then what can you do? And what I was reading in the teachings was that, for example, one teaching said that every human being, no matter what they've done, every human being has some light inside of them, even if it's a little bit of light. And your job is to focus on that light. And the more you focus on that light, the light then begins to grow and grow and grow until the person recognizes that light within themselves. And also things about teachings about judging others favorably. And one very profound one, and I don't want to give anything away in the movie, but there was this moment where I nearly quit, and they'd nearly fired me. And there's a student who had left who came back to have a conversation with me. And he reminded me of a conversation that I had had with him about moving to another area where he would not encounter the rival gang members anymore. And that was a real conversation that I'd had. And I had felt at that moment like everything in my life, everything that I'd done for these kids was wrong. Everything, like everything. And I'd never messed up that badly at a job before, ever. I'd always wildly succeeded. And right at that moment, I had read a teaching that if you save a life, you've saved the world, a world, because within a life is a world. It's a very famous teaching, and I didn't quite understand what that meant. And then I realized, okay, so I'd messed everything up that first year, except that I'd taken the time to have that one conversation with that one kid, even though it came at great personal expense and I got observed and like everything was like going wrong. But that one conversation that I thought was nothing, and realizing that one conversation had such an impact on this kid, and that maybe there was a bigger reason for me to be there. And I, when I say that, I don't mean even just for that kid. I mean for myself, that before everything had been focused on me and my career and my success. And here it's stopping and taking the time to have a conversation with a kid and hearing them and listening to them. And that maybe that's what I was missing in my life too, that it was just so self-centered. And instead, I needed to open myself up to other people and other stories. So that's how it connected to those teachings. I don't know if that was where you were going with that, but that's
Well, I've raised this because I really relate to it. And so even though we come from different religious traditions, I know you mentioned earlier that not really a tradition at all, but you had some semblance and then you started studying. But I think when I read that, it hit me because I thought, you know what, maybe that's what kept me. Because, and I don't, this is not about me, but I just want to briefly tell you that I was at a school in which I came in to the classroom and somebody had changed all the computer wallpaper, screen saver to so my first name is Ruben, right? Or they had written, they put F Aguilar, fuck Aguilar, right? Through all the screen. And I remember, so that was one, a day in the life of, and I was a new teacher. And I remember thinking after that week, what's the worst that can happen if I walked out of this job? Well, the worst that can happen is I'll lose my car. Okay, I can deal with that. I could lose my apartment, and live on, Norwalk Park, down the streets, live in the park. And I was thinking about it. What's so bad about living in the park, though? At least I was actually thinking that out, but I stayed. And as I thought about it, the reason I believe is because of that mission or that bigger reality of the spiritual lives of these people.
yeah.
And the importance of that one or two individual who was connecting with me and it was meaningful. So I really see that. And I think that's an advantage if you have that,
Yeah.
not to judge people that don't. So
No, I think you're absolutely right. And I want to add, it's very, very crucial to emphasize here. I don't feel like I was quote unquote like saving that kid. I think what was more happening, a more accurate description, is that we were saving each other because he was teaching me to listen and hear and see in a way that was far beyond me. That I'm just one little tiny little piece in a really, really big world and universe, and it's not about me. And that's what he was teaching me. And then I was just giving him my perspective that I was grateful enough to have had from my upbringing, and I was just sharing that other perspective. And it was bizarre to me to think that nobody had that conversation with him that I had with him, not his girlfriend, not his mom. Like nobody had that conversation that, maybe if you keep getting thrown in jail and keep getting involved in these things, maybe if you just, move to another neighborhood, it doesn't have to be Princeton, New Jersey. It can be, just a different neighborhood where you won't keep clashing in the same negative ways. And it was bizarre to me that nobody had that conversation with him. And it was bizarre to me that it had taken me over a year to stop and ask a kid who's sleeping on the desk, what's going on? Why? Imagine if I had had that conversation with him earlier. But again, no one showed me. So,
I've heard that conversation before with my first teaching job. I heard a teacher because we worked with Ruben and I worked with a lot of gangs and kids who were in gangs and girls who were pregnant. And one of the kids, same thing. The teacher said, "Hey, why don't you just get in a car and just get out of this community?" Because he saw that these kids were just like in a tornado, right? Just kept, their children were going to be in gangs and their children were going to be in gangs
yeah,
until you just get out of it. And but sometimes it takes someone like yourself to say, "Hey, why not, why don't you get out?" And right away the kids are like, "What? How do I get out of this? This is
right,
I can't even think." But as time goes on, he's thinking about it. And you've already gone on to your next situation, right? And then when that comes back, you go, "Wow, that makes it worth, like you're sharing, makes it worth it why you're in the profession, that you're able to touch lives." Because yeah, we get the content, but the kids don't always remember the content, but they remember those relationships, they remember those discussions, they remember those talks, and that was really growing time. How about how about your colleagues? How have they taken to the film and your students? Have they enjoyed that,
um,
or have they been like, "Wow," because I know,
so
yeah.
every kid that's seen it has told me that they loved it. The kids that I teach now, it's a different population. they don't exactly connect to what's happening in the classroom there, and they also don't connect to seeing me that way because I'm a different person. You know, teaching has changed me for the better, I think. I mean, I know. So it's bizarre for them to see me flailing the way I am.
Right.
But all I ask them to do is, well, are there any new teachers that you've experienced? And they're like, oh yeah, we give them a really hard time. It's like, you know, they go in for the kill, even, you know, in the current population of students but yeah, the school has evolved, the school has changed. The colleagues love it.
Oh,
Um,
good, good.
and that's probably the single most satisfying thing. Again, it connects back to the review that you made when teachers are recognizing this and seeing this and feel seen and heard. And I feel like, I don't know, somehow teachers have become on the bottom of the totem pole. Like they're dumped on as like the reason and the fault for everything. Meanwhile, you know, you saw during the pandemic, you know, parents struggle dealing with their one or two kids. And all of a sudden they see, aha, what is it like when a teacher is dealing with 30, 40 kids? And we got a little bit of respect and then things went back to the status quo. So I think
Right.
this was, teachers are seeing it. I wish more of the public would see it. I wish more of the public would see it and realize that teachers are really doing their best and they just need more support from everyone. So it's incredibly satisfying when teachers and colleagues are
Good.
happy seeing this.
There was a powerful, intense moment when it looks like there was going to be a real physical confrontation.
Yeah.
And I wish everybody could see that scene because you mentioned, I think it's made me a better person. In fact, I know it has. I was having a conversation with somebody, I don't know how much said a name, who said, how do you do it? I would be getting into, this is an adult, I'd be getting into fights. And I said, you know, it's a human thing
Yeah.
to feel that impulse of wanting to strike somebody, because that's our primal, you know, when we were children, we did that. But teaching really does bring this negotiation. You mentioned, you know, that was my favorite part of the movie, with the math teacher telling you the favorite line of our students want to be good at something, even
Yeah.
math. And
Yeah.
so this was so critical. This is something that we have learned as teachers. And so you're right. The public should see this movie.
Yeah. Well, hopefully. I mean, it begins with podcasts like yours. So I there's this real humbling, and again, I was studying about this at the time, but I was studying about humility. And there are a lot of teachings about humility. And this is what I'm about to say is very humbling, but I had to realize that if a kid is not doing what I need them to do or want them to do, or what I really believe they need to do for their best interest, but they're just not doing it. You know, my earlier approach was either fight them, get mad at them, or just give up on them and say, well, you know, and I can't tell you how many times I've heard this phrase, and I can't tell you how many times I've used the phrase, you know, you can bring a horse to the water, but you can't make them drink. What can you do? And one of the most humbling moments for me was recognizing this reality. It's really difficult to face. It's even difficult now for me to face, but that I'm the adult in the room. And if something's going to change, it's got to come from me. So I have to go back to the drawing board and figure out how I need to change my approach, how I need to change my lesson, how I need to change the structure of my planning, how I need to change how I'm communicating to produce a different result. And when you really, really sincerely try, it actually does work. I mean, not all the time, but it's surprising how all of a sudden you change your approach and then, oh my God, like I'm
Yeah.
getting a different result. Uh,
Yeah.
and you know, that was me like observing with teachers. How are you getting them to do this? You know, how are you getting those same kids to work in groups? How are you getting them to sit in the chair? How are you, but there's a lot behind that lesson. You know, the movie was originally twice as long, and I went deep into pedagogy, and people were watching it and they're like, too much pedagogy, it's getting boring. But I'm like, no, but teachers need to see this. Like, there was something behind the way she was structuring the groups, and she
Right.
was, there were timers every 5 minutes they go on to another thing. And I wanted to turn it into like a course on how to teach better. But really, she was structuring it in a way that they couldn't help but be engaged. So anyway.
When you were getting when teachers were suggesting you break them into groups and do group work and you weren't doing it, I was standing up and I was saying, Mr. Harchol, why aren't you doing it? Do it with, it got me all worked up.
Yeah.
Very, very good. And I mentioned this in the review. It's really the one film that we've seen. Although, help me, Jake. There was a real effective teacher, the one with Bud Cort. That guy was really good.
Oh, yes.
He did do
Don't
that.
shoot the teacher.
Oh, the teacher. He did break in groups, but it's really one of the only.
I'll have to see that movie. Don't Shoot the Teacher.
Yeah, it's a Bud Cort film, like 1975,
Oh, I'll have to-
6.
okay.
It's unusual.
It's unusual.
It's in some ways dated. However, you can't help but appreciate his challenge. It's up there with yours, Mr. Harchol. What he had to deal with, like 6, 7-year-olds, 8-year-olds, and 17-year-olds in one class. It's
wow.
odd. Yeah.
I think we should mention though that how you portrayed the admin was very. I mean, we've seen it portrayed in so many films that they're these evil bad people, or they're they're not there or they're not available.
Yeah.
But I felt like you were pretty real. And to speak to that, I mean, have you had anybody speak to you on that and to say, hey, right on, or how is the admin at your school, and how do they take it?
I do want to say that the film, it's all composites. So, it's combinations of various people. And the only one that's just 100% real there is Hanan Harchol. But there's, for example, one admin came to me after seeing the movie because she recognized certain things that reminded her of things that she might have done, etc. And I explained to her it's a composite because she came to me and she said, well, but you never got ineffectives. You always got, sets. And my answer to her was, I might have never gotten ineffectives, but I know so many, 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 many teachers that got ineffectives after ineffectives after ineffectives and then just gave up. So it's what happened, and I still felt like an incredible failure. But I also wanted to show in there that, again, just like I misunderstood the kids and was not hearing them, I was seeing my administration as, the evil empire, as the people that were coming in and were giving me heart attacks, because that's how I felt. And that's how many people felt. And that was very honest. And that's still how many people feel today. At the end of the day, though, the administration ultimately hopefully wants to turn you into a better teacher. I think what the film illustrates is that they are trying to turn you into a better teacher, but the system is not set up to allow them to turn you into a better teacher. If they're coming into your room once a month or once every 2 months, or in my case, even once a week for one class, that's not enough time to turn you into a better teacher. So when they offered me after 5-6 years for me to start administration school, because they're like, well, Danielson model now, and you're doing really well at this, and you could be a great AP. My answer was, you couldn't pay me enough money to do that, because I don't want to go in and evaluate someone on something that they haven't actually properly been trained on how to do. And this shows the conundrum that assistant principals are in, is that they're supposed to evaluate you. They're trying to turn you into a better teacher, but they simply aren't able to spend the amount of time that they need to turn you into a better teacher. So that's what I was trying to illustrate. I was trying to illustrate that there are many sides to administration. They're complex people too. They have a lot of pressure coming, as you mentioned in your review, from up above, and they're trying to do a good job themselves. They're caught between a rock and a hard place, but they end up, being just another weight, in many times, another weight of fear and pressure around the necks of new teachers.
No, thanks for sharing that because I always, as I was watching the film, I'm relating it to my own life. And I have a friend who has had some unsatisfactories. And I asked him, well, do they come and coach you? Do they come and help you with this and show you what, or do they just tell you unsatisfactory without coaching or training? He goes, no coaching, no training. Just like
That's right.
figure it out, buddy.
Figure it
Well,
out.
what do you
Figure it out.
want me to then show it to me? And I'm into modeling and that's I love when teachers come in and watch and I like to watch them but we don't see a lot of that. But like you shared, I felt like you did a pretty healthy way of showing that yeah, they're not perfect, they're getting it from above, but they're not really doing a lot of coaching and teaching, and a lot of it has to do with their time.
Yeah.
And also like you just said right now, sometimes they're not trained to do it. They don't know how to do that.
Yeah.
And so and
Um,
maybe they might only taught for I know administrators who only taught 2 or 3 years and now they're
yeah.
coming to my classroom saying let me teach you which
Yeah.
I'm always wanting to learn from people. I don't care who, but it's tough sometimes when you go, okay, I'm gonna shut up here and listen.
Jacob, I think you're so spot on with everything you're saying, and I want also to say that um, I think that if teachers, like in smaller schools, I heard with 200 or 300 kids, they have a much more of a nurturing community. Like I have some people that watch it and say, well, administrators that say, well, in our school, we had teachers visiting one another's classrooms and they had mentorship and training. And my first question is always, how large is your school? And they're like, well, 200 students. And I'm like, that's why. And I was told by very, very senior administrator, way high up, off the record, that where this is missing is in schools that are 1,500, 2,000 kids, 2,500, which is the majority of schools. They're bigger schools. They don't have that kind of training. And he said off the record that all administrators know what would need, the kind of training that would be needed, but nobody wants to put their political career on the line in terms of the investment of time and money that it would take. But it would actually pay for itself because by not having the high attrition rate and not having teachers wanting to leave and having them properly trained and supported would ultimately pay for itself in the higher test scores, teachers not leaving, and etc.
I know we're coming to the end here, but I do want to share something. I didn't share this in the review, and I don't know why I forgot, but I'm glad I got to share it with you because um, I got really emotional. I wept at the end of the film. I don't want to say exactly what. I think you might know what
Don't
I'm
give it
talking
away.
about,
Yeah.
right?
Don't give it away.
I'm not going to give it away, but my God, I want to say something, but I'm not going to say it. But have you had people come to you and share that they've been to, or maybe it's just me because I can relate. That's all I'm going to say. I can relate to something. I can relate to a lot of things in your film. I won't
Yeah.
say what it is, but this piece I really related to.
Yeah.
And I go, oh my gosh, have people come to you and said that really hit me?
Yeah. So many people did that. And this is part of writing.
Okay.
And by the way, the thing you're referring to is also happened in real life, also
Wow.
happened in real life in that way,
It happened to us
including,
too. Just
including with the baby, like
all that. Okay.
all sorts of, and the relationship with the father, it all happened, and happened actually around that same timeline. Was very little manipulation of the timeline, but I felt that that story was a perfect arc in terms of showing how Hanan needs to grow into his own person. So I weaved those two stories together, and it actually was very accurate. I do want to say, I talked about my dad before, so I'm going to talk about him again. My father was very, very, very concerned that I was making a living as a strolling guitarist, which
Okay.
I still play once a week, guitar. And I'm recording my 12th CD right now.
Oh, nice.
Now it's not CDs. Now it's all streaming on Spotify and Apple Music and all those things. But he was very, very concerned how would I ever support a family. So when I became a teacher, he was thrilled. And I was complaining to him a lot, and he just could not understand how can teaching high school be so complicated? Like, what's so difficult? Like, and again, there's another reason I wanted people um, to see what teaching really is, because I was had a misconception. Again, if more people could see it. Oh, this is another thing that's very satisfying. I've had teachers write to me saying, like, my boyfriend does not understand why I'm so tired, does not understand why I'm so stressed, and I sat him down to watch this movie, and now he gets it. Like, thank you for making this movie.
Perfect.
Yeah. So
And let's not forget that to get you from there to where you are now takes a lot of systems and things behind the scenes and things before school that you have to set up.
yes.
You had a particular challenge being a cinema teacher or a filmmaking teacher because you're dealing with equipment. And I always appreciate when things get stolen in teaching movies, because it's like it's a reality of our job that things go missing. And
Yeah.
that scene that I just have to bring out, I want to bring out two more things before I actually have a fun question to ask you. That scene I appreciate, and I go, I relate. And the dress, how he changed, he subtly changed his dress,
Yeah.
things like that. Like
Yeah.
people go to
Even his
work,
posture. Yeah.
Yeah.
his
Yeah.
his posture. It's those little details that create the full picture of our reality that we have to think about. These are immature people we are dealing with, especially that environment where they're going to say things.
Yeah.
So I appreciate you bringing
Oh,
that.
I'm so impressed that you guys picked up on all of these details. And, sometimes people say, well, if I'm a teacher, why should I be watching this? Because I'm living it. But I made the movie with all of those details. So you can be like, okay, like I see it, I get it, I know it. Like it just, I made it so that people in our community can really feel heard and seen in an honest way. So thank you for picking up on those details. Thank you.
Well, thank you for doing the film, because I felt like we finally, I mean, Ruben and I have been watching films for the last 3.5 years. And we, at the middle of it, we finally had to say, this is the number one film we've seen
Oh,
that,
wow.
we've seen some good ones though, but this one is like,
In
hey,
terms
every
of
new teacher,
authenticity,
authenticity.
there's nothing better. But I had like, and in terms of getting involved emotionally, and this is, and in terms of all time teaching films, it's in the top 5, definitely in the conversation.
Wow.
And I even asked Jake in the review, are civilians going to get this? Are they going to enjoy it? And Jake said, of course. And we're hearing, yes, they are. So I do have one fun question if Jake doesn't have anything else.
No, good.
You have a film background and you play the guitar. So and I'm just springing this on you. I hate when people spring this on me. This is a little bit of a fun thing. Here goes. 2 films. So this is not teacher related at all or related to your film, but I'm just curious. 2 films that you can see over and over again, and a guitarist that you just can't get enough of.
Yeah. So 2 films, Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind is an unbelievable movie. And then there are 2 other films that are really fantastic, but for completely different ways. And one of these films, I'll mention what it is, Good Will Hunting. I actually broke that film down. I watched it and broke it down into every scene and timed how long each scene was, because I tried to show the trajectory of the relationship between the therapist and the troubled kid, and how that evolved in such a short period of time, because a movie is a very short period of time, and to make that in a convincing way is very hard. So Good Will Hunting and Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. And then just from a comedic standpoint, but dialogue driven standpoint, Annie Hall, just because of the authenticity of I guess the cultural backgrounds. My wife is Catholic. I'm Jewish, and she's from Austria, and like we could not have come from more opposite cultures. But we came together in terms of our humanity, in terms of kindness. She's the kindest person I ever met, and I feel like she helped me tremendously in terms of not giving up in teaching and growing as a human being. I could not have done it without my wife. So I felt that Annie Hall kind of captures some of those cultural differences in dialogue. And then in terms of, you were saying albums?
So, by the way, with Annie Hall, I'm with you. I've seen it 100 times. I'll see it another 100. And maybe a guitarist or an album you can't get enough of.
So what I enjoy listening to probably more than anything is in terms of music is orchestral music, and it's Bruno Walter conducting Mahler, conducting Beethoven, and conducting Mozart. So again, when I'm making my own art, sometimes I have that on in the background when I'm doing painting and drawing, or working on something. But those are great questions.
I wrote those down, and we have a music week coming up where we have our music picks for the classroom. So I'm gonna check that out. I love classical, so thank you.
Well, I just want to thank you for coming on. This is really a treat for us after watching a film and then talking to the director writer. I do want to say one last thing. Do you see yourself making films in the future more? I mean, I know what you're doing, and it's and believe me, I respect that and I love that. And
Yeah.
I've had a little touch in films, and so has Ruben a little bit. But have you thought about doing more than this in the
Yeah,
future?
so I'm going to be really honest about
Mhm.
this. The film was made for a very, very small budget for films, just to give people an idea. Uh, and again, I don't know if you want to include all of this, but films have different budget categories, and the lowest budget category is not even called low budget; it's called ultra low budget, and it's a film that's made for under 250,000. And you get all sorts of extra things, like you can hire union with non-union if it's made for under 250, because if they say, if you're making a film for less than $250,000, no one's going to see it anyway. It's like, it's basically, it's not even considered real. And the most that I was able to raise was 145,000. So I had lots and lots of problems on the set, people revolting on me, people walking off the set. It was really, really, really hard. And one of the very experienced sound mixers was telling me, Hanan, the problem is you're trying to drive a car with three wheels. This is why people don't make films for under $250,000, and you're making it for 145. It's just, it doesn't work. And I was insisting on paying everybody, and I tapped into my kids' college funds, and I mean, it was bad. But people were saying, well, look, if you make a really good film, and if it gets really good reviews, you'll easily make back the 145,000. And we've made back maybe 10% of it. So the film is filmmaking is an incredibly losing ball game. And the bulk of the money came from Sarah Bloom, who's the executive director of the film. She got that title by putting a large part of funding. She funded $100,000 because she wanted to see what I could make with the film. And people are thinking that I'm getting rich when people are renting it on Amazon, but Amazon takes half of the rental fee, and the other half goes, to pay first for the main investor. And once she makes back her money, which I don't know if that'll ever happen, plus 20%, then after that, we split whatever's left over. But it's very difficult for me now to go to another investor and say, oh, why didn't you invest another $100,000 when 90% of the money was lost? If I had at least made back what I spent on it, then I could say, look, there's a likelihood you'll make back your money. But it's such a tough business if you don't have George Clooney in it, and
Right.
you don't have some major influencer behind it. I did get on Rotten Tomatoes, which is very hard to do. You have to get on Rotten Tomatoes. I don't know if you know this, but you have to get 7 professional reviews. And I had like 40 reviews, but you need to get 7 reviews on the level of LA Times, Hollywood Reporter, Film Threat. And I got exactly 7. And they all loved the movie. So I have 100%
Wow.
Rotten Tomatoes now. And a 9 point, over a 9 on IMDb. So it's very, very highly reviewed, but it just hasn't gotten in the hands of the right person in Amazon or somebody to put it front and center. I don't know how to do that, but
No.
I can't tell you how much this interview has filled me up with love and respect
Oh,
and
good.
admiration for you guys doing this. You're the real deal. And you
So are
know,
you.
if my movie ever does become famous, I'm going to absolutely give a shout back out to you guys, and I'm going to post this interview on
Oh,
all
please.
of my different things, and hopefully it'll get more traffic your way too.
Oh, that'd be great.
And real quickly, thank you for sharing that story about your film and the investment
Oh,
situation, and because it's an education for us, and
yeah.
and that's real talk, and
Mhm.
thank you for your hard work, because it was great. So thank you.
Well, with
Thank you.
that, I just want to thank you again, Hanan and Ruben, and all of you who came and visited us today on Pod and Deliver. We'll see you soon. Have a good one. Bye-bye.